What's up, everybody? How's everybody doing today? A lot to get to today. I am Ari Temkin, and this is FANTOM, where we are delivering live sports content to you, and putting you at the center of the Dallas sports discussion. So appreciate everybody who's already joined the show. If you have not yet already, please hit the share button. But this is your show. This is about you and your participation. You make this show what it is. It's your show. So, your commentary, your thoughts, your questions, feel free to ask those in this ongoing discussion that we have every day at noon Central, right here on FANTOM. And FANTOM puts you at the center of the Dallas sports discussion. Okay, what's going on, everybody? Michael Lafferty, Robin Castillo, Henry Munoz, Neil Favre, Carol Christensen, Ninja Nuts, Chris Bennett, all in the house. Jesse Garcia, what's up, everybody? Chris Bennett says there's a water crisis in Austin right now. Yeah, I saw that. Why? What's with the water crisis? There's also a crisis throughout Cowboys Nation today because, well, a week ago we were talking about how excited we were about this offense. They put up 40 points, unspeakable against a really, really good Jaguars defense. And then a week later, we're back to these same discussions. And the common thread this season with this team in particular is, who do we blame with the offense? I mean, the offense has been bad, inconsistent. I think each and every game, it's the same issues, but every game it's highlighted by something different. In the Houston game, it was the receivers. In the Washington game yesterday, it was the offensive line. In previous games, it's been the quarterback. And in all games, it's been coaching. So there's this common thread with this Dallas Cowboys team, and that is, quality defense with an inconsistent offense. And that's why they find themselves at 3-4. But a team that is certainly underperforming relative to what their defense is giving them. And it's disappointing for a lot of Cowboys fans, I'd imagine, because this defense is considerably better than people expected. And on the offense is completely dropping the ball when it comes to, picking up its end of the bargain. I thought there's a lot of blame to go around. Obviously, the most obvious piece to who to blame after the game yesterday is the offensive line. The offensive line was bad. Connor Williams was bad. Tyron Smith was inconsistent. So, again, it's like every week there's a different component that stood out most about how bad the offense was. And yet every week, it's like it's the same issues. The offensive line, the receivers, the quarterback, the play calling, the decision-making. That's all part of why this Cowboys offense is so bad, and maybe more specifically, so bad on the road. All right, shout out to everybody watching this. Henry Normant, Abby Davila on the Dallas Cowboys report page, Dallas Cowboys America's team page, Mike Wellman in the house, Jay Anthony, Hunter Narbers says, so next week is bye week. But in the meantime, who needs to go? Hashtag DC for life. Marcus Turner, thumbs up. Chris Heinsroth says 8-8 again. Jason Turner says offensive line looked bad. Start with them. Curtis Stark says it was a tough loss. We showed our heart, but our head coach showed no confidence in our offense. He got conservative on the road when the win was there for the taking. Alex Hernandez says it wasn't the receivers this week. Look, I think when your offense is this bad, it's everything every week. But again, as I touched on, this week the offensive line was like the most obvious piece that really struggled in this football game. And look, but I think the offensive line has been bad, or I'd say the offensive line has been average, at times above average, but at times below average. And yesterday I thought it was considerably below average. Dak Prescott has faced, on average, 4 sacks per game on the road. So whether it's been that they've played better, more aggressive defenses on the road, whether it is their communication's not very good, whatever the case is, their quarterback's under duress considerably more on the road than at home. They obviously still have inconsistencies at the receiver position. They still don't know exactly what their identity is. And Dak Prescott consistently struggles to complete passes down the field. I know his numbers looked pretty good, 273 with a touchdown, also had a rushing touchdown. But I thought, as much as the stats didn't look great after last week's game, I thought he played a much better game than his stats showed against Jacksonville. And I think he played a much worse game this week than his stats showed to Dak Prescott. I think at the precipice of all of this is Dak Prescott, who week after week after week is showing that he's not the guy to be the franchise quarterback for this team. And you might sit there and say, well, it's the coaching staff. It's not putting him in best position to be successful. And there's truth in that. But again, this kind of goes back to you've got to have a quarterback that can transcend some of this stuff in order to become the guy, in order to be paid $100 million and be that kind of a guy. And I just don't know that we've seen anything that would indicate that that's the case. I mean, he's really effective running the football, but I don't think their game plan was different this week. I think they wanted to get him in zone read options and opportunities, but the Washington defense did a good job in keeping him inside the pocket. Let's see here. On the Phantom page, shout out to all you watching across Phantom. Phantom puts you at the center of the Dallas sports discussion, so appreciate everybody checking out the Phantom page. And again, quickest way to have your comments heard and read is by going into Phantom, facebook.com/watch Phantom. Dakota Stiegel says, I was watching the talk show with Nate, and they were putting it all on Dak. Talking about Nate Newton. John Dyer says Connor and Collins need to swap positions, which is an interesting discussion because Lyle Collins seems to be a better fit at guard. Connor Williams seems to be a better fit at tackle. So I wonder if that is something that they might look at during the bye week. Michael Lafferty says, totally agree with you, Ari. He's very inaccurate and gun-shy. Dakota Stiegel says Dak could not see the open guy at all. Ross McCaden says, Ari, do we really think that Kellen Moore should be the guy to coach Dak to the level he needs to be? Look, I think if we're looking at Kellen Moore for the reason for Dak's struggles, I think we're at a point where we're probably grasping for straws, more than anything else, quite frankly. I just think, is Kellen Moore the best quarterbacks coach? I don't know. I mean, how many other quarterbacks coaches are we familiar with across the league? I think, again, you have to have a player that is able to transcend some of these issues, and I don't know that that's the case for the Dallas Cowboys. Steven Van Dinter says, do you think they fire Garrett? What are they waiting for? Good question. And then Don Fantastic says, get rid of the rookie guard. And look, I thought Connor Williams had a pretty good season up to the game yesterday, but obviously the game yesterday was not great for him. And it stood out because he had that huge holding penalty on the tackle, basically, on the play that would have given them the first down. So, look, I think coming into this season, the expectations were that this offense could be really good based upon the offensive line and running game. That was the approach that I took. I thought based on a healthy offensive line and a offensive line that gets back to being one of the best in the NFL, and then a really good running game, this team could be a really good offense. And we haven't seen that. We've seen at times they have a really good running game, but on the road they haven't. And we haven't really, again, we've issues with quarterback, issues with coaching, issues with offensive line, issues with wide receiver. That's the reason this team hits the road, and 17 points is the largest output they've had in any game they played. That's the reason. The reason is because they have all kinds of holes and issues across their offensive line, wide receiver, quarterback, and coaching. And I guess that's what I'm asking you to comment on. So tell me what you think. What went wrong for the Cowboys to Washington? Who is most to blame? Thumbs up if you think it's quarterback issues. Heart emoji if you think it was offensive line issues. And give me the laughing emoji if you think it was coaching issues. I do want to play for you Tony Romo on the call last night and some clips of him at the end of the game second-guessing Jason Garrett, and then Jason Garrett, his explanation for why he played out the final, the final few seconds that way. But obviously, Jason Garrett again plays very conservatively at the end of this football game. Played for the tie to take the field goal once he got into range instead of taking a shot for the end zone. A overly conservative head coach who doesn't seem to have a plan at the end of games because he constantly has these issues when it comes to clock management, play calling, those kinds of things at the end of games. It's not the first time we've seen that. I'm Ari Temkin. This is Phantom, part of the New World Order of sports media. We are delivering live sports content to you wherever you are. All right, delivering live sports content to you in the social channels, and Phantom puts you at the center of the Dallas sports discussion. Let's see here. Edwards Loganville says 2 words for the offensive line woes. Bill Callahan, O-line has not been the same since he left. Neil Favre says, so true to that comment. Brian Hogan in the house. What's up, Brian Hogan? How are you? Dakota Steele says, can I blame quarterback and coaching? Which I think that's part of it. G. Garcia says, what's up, Ari? Ken Wilkes on the Dallas Cowboys America's team page says, Garrett is a yes man, not a coach. Look, I think Garrett's got a lot of flaws as a head coach. I'm not the biggest fan of Jason Garrett, but I also think, he understands how to placate to Jerry Jones. He understands how to placate to Jerry Jones. But I don't know that necessarily means he's a yes man. I think, the idea that he works well with Jerry doesn't mean he's a bad coach. I think there's other reasons for why he's a bad coach. Brian Walker says defense doesn't respect our passing game. Make the deal for Cooper or Thomas. Chris Bennett wants to know if Phantom delivers water. No, not yet. Yeah, look, it's hard not to look at the offensive line coach and see issues there, certainly with Paul Alexander coming in. I also think, there's a regression. Tyron Smith is not healthy, and that was the issue, right? It was the issue coming into this season, was Tyron Smith's health. He has a bad back, and when a big man has a bad back, he's going to have a bad back. It doesn't get better. And I know he did yoga and different things this offseason to try to get him in best shape, but I think we're starting to see the decline of Tyron Smith in his career. And so, you look at the decline of Tyron Smith, the loss of Travis Frederick, and then a rookie guard. And I certainly think that we can pinpoint the coaching and say, well, it's worse, and I agree with you there. But I also think there's player regression here too. Joe Looney, I think, has done an adequate job, but there's a lot of things that we can't really measure or gauge because we're not in the huddle, we're not there at the line of scrimmage, we don't know the calls that are being made. There's so many things that you just have to assume that Travis Frederick does a better job of than Joe Looney, that Joe Looney can't. Physically, Joe Looney might be as good as Travis Frederick, but making the calls, the checks, those kinds of things, those are things that we can't really measure statistically. And we won't really know for sure because the guys who he's playing alongside are going to throw him under the bus, but I just assume it's a different situation. So again, it's not that Looney's not performing well, it's that he's performing as well as he can given his situation, but that I don't know that he could perform any better because there's things that Travis Frederick can do that make Travis Frederick one of the best centers in the game, if not the best center in the game. Let's see here. Henry Munoz says it's both quarterback issues, offensive line issues, and coaching issues. Keith Stone says here and shared. What's up, Keith? How are you? Walt Chisholm says, and no replacement for Dez or Witten. Yep. Isaiah Herrera says, how many more games do we need to lose before any changes? The thing is, this team certainly seems to be on track for 8-8, doesn't it? So it's, on the one hand, they're just talented enough and motivated enough because of Garrett to stay in games, but not to the point to where they're going to be out of it anytime soon, right? They the bye week this week, then they have Tennessee coming out of the bye week on Monday night, and so I think this team will be in the race for the majority of this season, and so as long as that's the case, they're going to keep their coaching staff intact. Now we know that they've been active in the trade market, or trying to be. They've inquired about Amari Cooper. They're doing some research on him. I don't know how active the Cowboys have been, truthfully, in trying to trade for Demaryius Thomas. On this show, I've spoken outwardly about how I think the Cowboys should very much trade for Demaryius Thomas. I'd prefer him over Cooper, not because I think he's a better player, because he's not. I just think he's cheaper, and it's more of a low risk for a guy that has a lot of production, even without great quarterback play. But I also think at this point where they are, given their wide receiver situation, it wouldn't be the worst move in the world for them to trade for Amari Cooper. It just depends on now what they're trading for him. It doesn't seem like Oakland's going to be able to get a first-round pick for him. If they could, they probably would have already made the deal. So either they're not going to trade him, or they could potentially trade him for a second-round pick. Not sure. If I were the Cowboys and it was a second-round pick for Amari Cooper, I'd probably do that. I would. Diego Maestas says, this season's down the drain with or without Amari Cooper. Let's not trade any draft picks. We're wasting away as Zeke Elliott, and we need to rebuild the offensive line. Keith Stone says, think Dak had a concussion. Why would he get smelling salts if he didn't? They can give you smelling salts for all different kinds of reasons. Greg Zuniga says he burnt all of his Cowboys gear. I doubt you did, but that's a good move if you did. Brian Hogan says, always really spot on with your football perspectives in general and for sure about our Cowboys. Love the show. Thank you for saying so, man. I appreciate that. Diana Lopez in the house. Diana, how are you? Ken Wilkes says, agree Thomas would be better. Zach Rosenberg says, is a wide receiver alone fix the problems? Here's the thing. Like, no, of course not. That's like, you couldn't isolate any one position probably beyond quarterback and say, well, they fixed that and they fixed their problems. But I also think, like, yeah, bringing in a legitimate number one wideout would go a long way in fixing their offensive issues. I mean, they came into the season with the approach they didn't need to get a legitimate number one wideout. Now, whether they said it or they actually believed it are two different things probably. But, I mean, they clearly do need a number one, and that's what they're missing. So the impact that having a legitimate number one would have on the rest of this team, we're not entirely sure of what that would be. But it would dramatically impact this team positively because now, you've got better options with Cole Beasley. I mean, again, the same kind of stuff with Beasley where people are like, why aren't they targeting Beasley more? Because he's getting doubled. He's getting doubled throughout the majority of the game. And so they're not looking for the opportunities, either one, to get him the ball even when he's doubled, or two, they don't have a quarterback that can read defenses properly, so he doesn't understand if they're in man-to-man or zone. It's because of that he's confused about where to go with the football. And again, I just think Jacksonville made it pretty easy for Dak to read the defense, which is a shock in some ways. But maybe Jacksonville was that confident in their defense that they played him straight up man-to-man across the board, and so it was easy for him to read. And you wonder if teams are mixing up their man and zone coverages because Dak can't really diagnose which one is which. He's not really sure where to go with the football given the specific circumstances. Ninja Nut says, who are we getting in the next draft? There isn't that big of a talent in the position groups we need right now. I don't know that I would say that. Probably too early to tell, especially at some of the key positions, like skill positions. Steve Dintner says, I like the idea of Romo being the coach. I don't. Matthew Kennedy, don't need more changes. See how it's hurt so far with all the changes done. What have they changed? I mean, that's great that, you think they've already done too many changes. I guess my question is, what are the changes that you've seen? Wendy Mason wants to know where Bryce Butler is. Maybe he's just not good enough. I mean, at this point, it seems like a talent problem and not like he can't find the field problem. I mean, I did an interview with Bryce Butler on Thursday. He seemed pretty confident that he'd get a lot of snaps and opportunities. And I don't know what percentage of snaps he was out there, but it certainly wasn't more than, what we saw from Allen Hurns, Michael Gallup, and Cole Beasley. And now the question is, who should Bryce Butler play instead of? Probably Allen Hurns, I guess. Probably. Houston Cowboys says, remember what I said about consistency? Somewhat. But if you'd like to repeat it, maybe the Cowboys aren't very consistent, and that's why they're not very good. If you have not yet already, go ahead and hit the share button. Post your comments. I'm Ari Temkin on Phantom. You can also catch me as part of the Cowboys pre- and post-game show on 105.3 The Fan and across the Dallas Cowboys radio network. And, of course, streaming live to you every day at 12 o'clock Central right here on Phantom. Phantom puts you at the center of the Dallas sports discussion. Bryce missed a pass in the end zone that he could have fought for. That's where can't be sold on inconsistency. Hunter Cox says, get rid of JG. We need a wake-up call in the locker room. Anthony Donaldson says, no, sir. No new wide receiver. Dak still has to get the football. Has to get the wide receiver the ball. Dak's football IQ is low. Patrick Prescott says, why does Thompson get any run? What has he guy ever done? I mean, look. The issue is they don't have a number one. The issue was they don't have a number one. So we can complain about all these other complimentary receivers that shouldn't be in this complimentary role, but that's like at the end of the day, there's a domino impact that having a number one has to the rest of your receiving core. And that's the reason you need a number one, is so you stick him out there in the X spot, he commands double teams, and now other guys get opportunities one-on-one, and coverages shade certain ways, which gives other opportunities. But, the Cowboys are just in a situation to where, their quarterback's not really reading what the defense is doing, zone or man, and because of that, he's just not really sure where to go with the football. He's got so many options at his disposal. But I just think at this point it's obvious that they're having an issue with all of their offense. All of their offense is an issue. And, I just don't know that you can, again, I think the hierarchy remains the same. Probably the biggest issue is at quarterback. Second biggest issue is at coaching. Third biggest issue is at receiver. And then the fourth biggest issue is at offensive line. Those are all big issues, and they're all conspiring to give the Cowboys what they have, inconsistency across the board on offense. But, at the end of the day, to isolate one piece as being that issue, I think last game, the offensive line and Dak Prescott were the two biggest things. I think the loss before against Houston, it was Dak Prescott and the receivers, or maybe the coaching staff and the receivers. So, all of these problems that we see sort of create the identity of what this Cowboys team truly is. As sad or as tough as that is, as tough as a pill as that is to swallow, that's sort of who this team is at this point. They've shown that more consistently than anything else. Jason Turner says, should have brought Conor McGregor with them. That's a great point. That's probably the biggest reason why they lost. Matthew Kennedy says, along with everything else that's caused them to make changes. Patrick Prescott says, you're absolutely correct with that order, Ari. John Kubert says, Dak cannot handle any pressure, man, and very inaccurate. Everything has to be perfect for him to complete a pass. Well, and you can kind of say the same thing for their offense. Everything has to be perfect for them to score. That seems to be the case, and that's what happens with the team that scores so inconsistently. Dalton Miller says, Ari, I'm sorry. Everything I said they needed to do on the show Thursday, they didn't do. I apologize for thinking they could put up a 30 burger. It was awful. That the shame is shameful. Well, Dalton, you expected that this Redskins secondary wasn't going to be the 85 Bears, and apparently they were against the Cowboys. They were just tough to throw on, but you'd have to expect that from a secondary that doesn't have a lot of broken plays, right? It's really incredible. You saw early on they do the double move with Michael Gallup, who gets free and has that 49-yard touchdown pass, and it's like all of a sudden it's like, hey, maybe Dalton was right. What he said about broken coverages and this team not being able to consistently cover. Maybe Dalton was right, and they just didn't take advantage of it for whatever reason. And I guess that reason is their offensive line and their quarterback just taking sacks, not knowing when to get rid of the ball. Ryan Kerrigan was looking old coming into this game, and all of a sudden he and Preston Smith look like, Adrian Claiborne did last year. And that's the thing is it's like, every home game, every away game, I should say, it's like they're going up against this unbelievable defense that they just can't stop. And, at some point, isn't it on the offense to, give you a game where you've got some faith restored in them, especially on the road? Let's see here. Brian Hogan says, a true number one helps the run game big time as well. Either you stack the box or play that true number one one-on-one. By the way, here was, if you missed this during the broadcast, here's the end of the game. Here's Tony Romo and Jim Nantz, their call at the end of this game. Listen to what Tony Romo says.
Well, you're gonna want to just spike it. That's the number one thing, because it's first down. It doesn't hurt you at all for 1 second to go off the clock. Get everybody lined up. That way, there's no pressure or anything coming. Spike the ball. You have one timeout, and then.
After review, the ruling on the field stands as called. It was a completed catch.
So you get everyone lined up right now as fast as you can. Just line up. Tell them, Dak, just get lined up. Just stand there. Oh, see, they're going to run a play. If I'm Washington, I come after you. They're not going to know who's coming or get it protected.
And a timeout to come out to try to tie it and send it to overtime.
See, if you spike it, there's 11 seconds. You throw a slant. You take a shot down the field. If they get in there and they drop everybody way deep, you just hand it off and do the same thing.
It felt like there
but if it's
could
cover
have
one,
been.
man, you take a shot to the end zone.
Felt like there could have been, on the math, one shot for an end zone.
Yeah, that's if you spike it, you have a timeout. You come out and say, quarterback, it's 2 plays. We're handing it off if they're dropping way deep. Otherwise, we're throwing a go route down the sideline to our big guy.
There you go. So Romo the entire time is bringing up the fact that he thinks this team needs to, clock it, get up to the line of scrimmage, clock it, and take their shot. I mean, it doesn't assume they're going to win the game by taking a shot in the end zone, but it gives your team a chance to win the game for itself. And this is sort of what we've been talking about with Jason Garrett. This isn't about the end result. It's about how you get to that end result, 1. And 2, it's about understanding game, score, situation, what to do. I mean, this is not the first time we've been questioning Jason Garrett and his decision-making at the end of football games. He seems very unsure of what to do at the end of football games. Yesterday, I was watching the Bears game. I don't know if everybody saw the end of the Bears-Patriots game. But the Bears threw a Hail Mary short of the end zone, and Kevin White caught the ball and then was denied the end zone. Everybody's like, oh my God, he got tackled to the 1. But I mean, look at New England. Look at the Patriots. Look at their coaching staff. Like, they prepare for every situation. Their players understand what to do given every situation. It's not a coincidence that they essentially allowed Kevin White to catch the ball and then tackled him short of the end zone. Like, this is what good teams that are well coached do at the end of football games. The end of that Bears-Patriots game gives you a really good indication of what really good coaches know how to do, and that's kind of stuff that's hidden. That just looked like a blown opportunity for the Bears instead of being a great coaching job by Bill Belichick. But that's exactly what it was. I used to work with Dat Wynn, who played under and coached under Bill Parcells. Like, every situation is accounted for. Every situation. Even, I remember Dad telling me this, obscure situation they'd practice, and the players would be like, why are we practicing this? And then in a game, it actually happened. And they were just beside themselves that they knew exactly what they needed to do and were supposed to do given that same situation. And this team, time and time again, seems like it's completely lost on what it has to do in end-of-game situations. And there's this confusion, and the coach doesn't know, and he's sort of making up his mind as he goes along. I mean, have a plan. Have an end-of-game plan, and then implement that plan and strategy, and do that at the beginning of training camp and then throughout the course of the year. It seems like Jason Garrett says they practice this kind of crap, and then every game or multiple times it seems like they mismanage the end of games because their coach doesn't know what they're doing, and the players in turn don't know what they're doing. I mean, it's incredible. Here's Romo, again, hammering home what Jason Garrett should have done.
See, if you spike it, there's 11 seconds. You throw a slant. You take a shot down the field. If they get in there and they drop everybody way deep, you just hand it off and do the same thing.
It felt like there
but if it's
could
cover
have been.
Man, you take a shot to the end zone.
Felt like there could have been, on the math, 1 shot for an end zone.
Yeah, that's if you spike it, you have a timeout. You come out and say, quarterback, it's 2 plays. We're handing it off if they're dropping way deep. Otherwise, we're throwing a go route down the sideline to our big guy.
There you go. I mean, Romo said it before, and he continued to say it. I mean, he's literally, as the Cowboys are taking the passive approach, he is literally telling them what they should be doing. And by the way, in Romo's career, instead of just talking about it, and even if Jason Garrett would be like, hey, we're in field goal range, we're good to go now, Romo would be like, no, I'm still going to get my shot at the end zone because there's no harm in it, right? You get up to the line of scrimmage, you clock the ball with 10 seconds left. That gives you enough time to throw one pass towards the end zone. You can't, and plus you still have that timeout in your back pocket. So it's not as if they're out of timeouts, so you have to know, don't throw short of the end zone, or, none of those things are at play. The entire playbook is available to you. Take a shot for the end zone. Instead, Jason Garrett played not to lose. Here's Garrett's explanation after.
You think about just take a shot in the end zone, or you just after that?
Yeah, the biggest thing after we got ourselves into field goal range was to try to get up there and clock the ball, preserve that last timeout, and then give us the freedom. I think we were able to get it clocked at 12 seconds. So once we got to that point, the biggest thing we wanted to do was maximize the field goal opportunity and run the ball, make some yards, use the timeout, and then kick the game-tying field goal.
Play not to lose. There you go. basically saying, once we got into field goal range, we felt pretty good about kicking a field goal there and tying the game, playing not to lose. Julia Martin says should have never gotten rid of Bailey. He would have made it. I don't know. I'm not so sure about that. I love Dan Bailey, but look, Brett Maher's been very, very good for this team this year. And look, certainly he shoulders some of the blame, as he should, for this outcome. So should LP Ladiseur, who everybody's trying to make excuses for him. Well, he always does it. Well, like, the reality of it is there was a little bit of movement, which then caused the defensive line to go up. I mean, it was a false start by definition. It doesn't matter that he does it every time. The issue there is the defensive line doesn't jump off sides every time. So if the defensive line stays on sides, then they don't whistle it. But because they didn't, the guy, there's one official staring at the snap, making sure there's no movement. And he saw that his hand, the hand of LP Ladiseur moved. That's why they called it. So, I mean, you can blame Ladiseur, you can blame Maher, you can blame the offense. I mean, they're all culprits in this loss for the Cowboys. But I think what stands out more than anything else is coaching issues and quarterback issues. Which one is worse? At this point, I'm not entirely sure. I certainly think with a better coaching staff, Dak Prescott could be better, but I don't know if he's better enough that you can then put $100 million of an investment into him. Let's see here. Michael Wilson says, can't put a rookie kicker on the chopping block like that. I mean, sure you can. Why not? I mean, he doesn't matter what he is. Rookie, veteran. I mean, you gotta test him and see what's going on. I mean, you got to put him in different scenarios. I mean, a 50-yard kick's a kick he's got to make. So, I mean, he certainly should shoulder some of the blame for this loss. No question. LeDucier. That's not it. Alex Hernandez. It would be if he were... I mean, I know he's French-Canadian, but it's Ladiseur. It looks like it should be LeDucier, but it's Ladiseur. And he's been with the Cowboys since 2005. Let's see here. Edwards Loganville says played to tie, still lost. Yeah, agreed there. Let's see here. Diana Lopez says, I yelled at my TV yesterday. Why tie the game? Go for it. And that's, again, to me, it's not like, well, I mean, you take the shot and it's automatically you're going to get a touchdown off of that. Like, I mean, to me, it's not about the results, it's about the process. It's about what you go through schematically as a coach. And, it seems like teams week in, week out have a plan for end-of-game situations, and Jason Garrett repeatedly doesn't. And, for whatever reason, I mean, it's like you just see these end-of-game situations where the Cowboys completely mess up, continually mess up, and, and there's the coaching staff pointing fingers in other directions. Like, it's not on us. I mean, we tried to take the points and kick the field goal. It's like, well, I mean, you've got Romo in the booth telling you, get up to the line of scrimmage, clock it, and then now you've got 10 seconds left with a timeout to take your shot. You still have a timeout. So as long as you don't take 10 seconds for the entirety of the play, you get down and, and you clock the ball and you take your shot for the end zone. It doesn't mean you're automatically going to get a touchdown and win the football game, but at least you give your team an opportunity to win the game. And he didn't do that. He played for the tie. He ran the football and then took his timeout that way, which is like the most passive conservative thing you could possibly do. And this all goes back to the same sort of idea about Jason Garrett, which is, he's the old school coach. And in the modern era of offensive football with teams utilizing different personnel packages and, all kinds of advanced analytics to guide schematics and on and on and on, it's like this team is continually stuck in the Stone Age. And, it sucks because you've got 1 week of really good football where the team puts up 40 points and it's like they're building something and all of a sudden it's like all the good is undone by another bad road loss, and this time to a divisional opponent. And it's like it was so obvious how they were going to beat them. Like I did the film study that I released on Friday, and it basically gave you the entire blueprint for how the Washington Redskins won the game. Don't turn the ball over and stop the run. That's all they do. It's all the Washington Redskins do. They don't turn the ball over, so they wait for you to turn the ball over, and then they run the ball. That's it. 130 yards rushing for Washington, +2 in the turnover ratio. Boom. They win those games. That's why they have 4 wins. They basically have 4 wins this season because they let the other team screw up. That's their approach. Patrick Kahn, my brother, says 52 seconds left and you don't run and play until 26 seconds left. Total give up. Yep. Jesse Garcia says Garrett's coaching like this is 1968. Yep. I mean, again, we can again play the clip of Romo here. I love it. Here we go.
You're going to want to just spike it. That's the number one thing because it's first down. It doesn't hurt you at all for 1 second to go off the clock. Get everybody lined up. That way, there's no pressure or anything coming. Spike the ball. You have 1 timeout, and then.
After review, the ruling on the field stands as called. It was a completed catch.
So you get everyone lined up right now as fast as you can. Just line up. Tell them, Dak, just get lined up. Just stand there. Oh, see, they're going to run a play. If I'm Washington, I come after you. They're not going to know who's coming or get it protected.
And the timeout to come out to try to tie it and send it to overtime.
See, if you spike it, there's 11 seconds. You throw a slant. You take a shot down the field. If they get in there and they drop everybody way deep, you just hand it off and do the same thing.
It felt like there
but if it's
could
cover
have
one,
been.
man, you take a shot to the end zone.
Felt like there could have been, on the math, 1 shot for an end zone.
Yeah, that's if you spike it, you have a timeout. You come out and say, quarterback, it's 2 plays. We're handing it off if they're dropping way deep. Otherwise, we're throwing a go route down the sideline to our big guy.
There you go. Again, Romo tells you, what he would have done in the same situation. Only this time he's not the offensive coordinator of the Cowboys as their quarterback. Instead, he's calling the game. And he calls it right away. Like the catch happens, and he's saying as they're going to the replay booth, he's saying get up to line of scrimmage, spike the ball, and take your shot there. It seems pretty obvious. Again, it doesn't guarantee you win. It doesn't guarantee that you're going to win the game because you've spiked the ball and you've given your team a chance. It's just this is all about being aggressive, not sitting back and playing passively. This is all part of the aura of Jason Garrett as a coach, which is conservative, playing not to lose, those kinds of things, which are not a good way to win in the modern NFL. Curtis Starks, I think, said it perfectly. Garrett seems to worry about how he's judged after the game for his coaching decisions instead of giving his team the best chance to win. Yep, no question. Jason Garrett, like a lot of other coaches, just want to maintain employment. So they do things that don't put themselves at risk for being second-guessed when it comes to Monday morning quarterbacks, right? You can look at the end of this game and say, Garrett did, look, the team got in position to tie the game at least, and they missed the field goal. So, Garrett, it's always like Garrett gives himself options for people to make excuses for him. But yet, the common theme is he's not willing to take the risks necessary to go outside of his comfort zone and go out and win football games for this team. At this point, the best thing you can hope for as a Cowboys fan is a team that remains competitive throughout the majority of the year just for fun and then fires their head coach after the season because they missed the playoffs. And make no mistake, this team is going to fire its head coach if they don't make the playoffs. This fan base is becoming more and more apathetic as the season rolls along. I don't think there's any question about that. Look at the ratings in DFW on TV. The TV ratings for the Cowboys in DFW paint a very interesting picture of the type of apathy that exists within this market. The Cowboys were always number 1 in their time slot on TV, no matter what. And that's not the case this year on television, which is crazy. And that, to me, tells you exactly where this team is with Jason Garrett. The fans are done. Most fans, 95% of the fans have seen this before, and we've complained about these issues. We shouldn't have been surprised that the Cowboys didn't take a shot for the end zone there because Jason freaking Garrett is their head coach. He's risk averse. So he doesn't want to throw an interception, right? Because what happens if you throw the ball in the end zone there? You might throw an interception. You might win the game, but you might also throw an interception, and then everybody's going to be wondering why I threw the ball. No, then everybody's going to be blaming the quarterback that isn't very good. But instead, everybody's blaming you because you didn't want to take the shot that could have given your chance the team to win the football game. Back-to-back road games for this team, and their head coach completely goes against any sort of risk when it comes to making a bet on the offense. Diana Lopez says, but he didn't make it. Not completely his fault, but another run could have possibly gotten him closer. True, but what I'm saying is the fact that he didn't make it gives Garrett a legitimate excuse, and that's the case every time. Like when you're a coach that takes risks, you put yourself out there. You put yourself out there to be criticized. And Garrett seemingly time and time again does the opposite, which is, he puts other guys on his team in position to take the blame for things that he should be taking the blame for. Give your offense a chance to win the football game. Mark Little says it would be quicker on what went right because there wasn't much. Defense. What went wrong for the Cowboys in Washington? Thumbs up if it was quarterback issues, heart emoji, offensive line issues, and laughing emoji if it's coaching issues. Look, 7 weeks into this season, it's pretty obvious what this team is. Good on defense, bad on offense. And why are they bad on offense? Well, because their offensive line isn't great. Their quarterback isn't great. Their receivers aren't great. And their coaching staff's not great. Where those fall on the line between like horrible and great, like that's where like you probably have the offensive line closer to great than horrible. You probably have the coaching staff closer to horrible than great. There's a spectrum there, but for the most part, everything on offense is not great. Somewhere below not great. Keith Stone says they need to fire him even if they somehow win out. Well, they're not going to win out, but if they did, they wouldn't fire him. I'm telling you, if they make the playoffs, they're not firing him. This is it's normally not that black and white, but it is in this situation. It's pretty black and white in this situation. And that is win and make the playoffs and their coach stays, but lose and don't make the playoffs and he's out. I have no doubt about that. Jason Turner says it's the same old broken record. Yeah, here again we can play the cut, but let's see. Here is Jason Garrett after the game explaining away what happened and what went wrong.
Yeah, the biggest thing after we got ourselves into field goal range was to try to get up there and clock the ball, preserve that last time out, and then give us the freedom. I think we were able to get it clocked at 12 seconds. So once we got to that point, the biggest thing we wanted to do was maximize the field goal opportunity and run the ball, make some yards, use the timeout, and then kick the game-tying field goal.
Again, I mean, there you have the explanation from the horse's mouth, so to speak. I mean, he played not to lose. That's what he did, and he ended up losing the game. Patrick Kahn says Cowboys are 0-5 when Zeke has less than 75 yards. They have to run the ball, find a way. I mean, and this kind of goes back to the root of their offensive issues, right? Like, if they're so one-dimensional, they're telling teams how to defend them, and they don't have situations on the outside that they can take advantage of. One, and two, they probably don't have a quarterback that can adequately read defenses. And I think Jesse Holley pointed this out while we're watching the game. But Dak, like, there's certain things you can do within a game to see how a defense is playing you, right? Like, you can send, and we saw this towards the end of the game, you can send Cole Beasley in motion. And then if the guy follows, pretty good indication that that they're in man-to-man. If guy doesn't follow, pretty good indication that they're in zone. But it just seems like at times teams are going man-to-man against them, times they're going zone, and they're making the quarterback guess which one's which, and the quarterback's not necessarily having the best time figuring out which one is which. So again, every week I seem to go more and more towards the side of Dak Prescott not being the guy. And I thought, going into this year, I thought it was 70-30 he was the guy, 30% he wasn't. But it's almost gone completely the opposite way now after 7 weeks, because I thought a lot of the excuses that we had after last season for Dak Prescott's inadequacies were explainable. You can make excuses for them. Zeke Elliott being gone, Tyron Smith's health, but at this point, it's like, how many excuses we're going to make for this guy, right? Like, yeah, there's coaching issues. Don't get me wrong. There's coaching issues, obviously. I mean, this is a coaching staff that's not confident in its offense and unwilling to take risks to back the offense up. The receiving core is bad, and it's not their fault. They don't have a number one. Offensive line's been inconsistent. So it's like all of these things that go wrong, and at the end of the day, if you don't have a quarterback that can make up for some of those issues, you've got issues, and that's the problem here. Diana Lopez says watching Garrett speak is like pouring salt on the wound. And I thought Jason Garrett was as dejected as we've seen Jason Garrett in a long time. The losses this year, he seemed to be more dejected. I wonder how much that's attributable to the fact that he thinks this could be it for him if he doesn't get to the playoffs. Lucas Pacheco says, hi, Ari. Lucas, how are you? Javier De Leon says, do we have options? Where, at quarterback? At wide receiver? I, for one, wouldn't mind them making a move to get Amari Cooper. I wouldn't trade a first-round pick for him. I would for a second. I would try and trade for Demar. I mean, I would try to do something to upgrade the receiver position. But, this idea that they built this offseason, they didn't need a number one wide receiver, was either them saying that because they didn't want to re-sign Dez and they struck out in free agency, or they actually thought it, and that's probably dumber. Edwards Loganville says, anyone have the stats on Dak fumbles? He may not throw INTs, but he still has his fair share of fumbles and fumbles lost. Yeah, I mean, and he throws INTs too. I mean, he's Dak Prescott has probably turned the ball over more than he should. And again, I mean, his best attribute right now is running, which is not a great thing to say about your quarterback. But when you leave a game and it's like, man, why don't they run the ball more with their quarterback? It's like, yeah, I mean, they did, but then their quarterback looked like he suffered a concussion but didn't. And now, I mean, you have to think that had them second-guessing how often they wanted Dak Prescott to run. So, I mean, like this is the problem you have with a quarterback that can't really throw consistently down the field. Diana Lopez says, dysfunctional would be okay if they made it work. Jesse Garcia says, every team has issues. We're more than issues. We're dysfunctional. Yeah, and look, I mean, Jacksonville apparently had a shouting match in the locker room after their latest loss to Houston. Like, that's what happens. Is good teams talk about how great chemistry is, and bad teams have meetings. Like, that's not a product of it's not a symptom of losing, it's a product of losing. Because that's an important line of demarc. It's an important delineation you need to make, right? Like, what are symptoms of losing versus what are products of losing? A product of losing is a team fights. So that doesn't, team infighting doesn't lead to losing so much as it's a product of losing. But the symptoms of losing are, offensive line issues and quarterback inconsistencies and, wide receiver issues and play calling. I mean, those are all symptoms for this team of losing. Those are major reasons why they've lost the games they've lost this year. Brian Walker says, what was Jerry Jones' comments after this loss? I didn't hear them. That's a good question, though. He was nowhere to be found. We know what this team is. It's nearly a half of the season already. I often say you can judge based on quarters. We had the first quarter, and we thought it's not a very good offense. Second quarter is almost done, and it's the same thing. We know what this team is. Doesn't necessarily indicate what this team will be or could be, but we know what this team is through 7 weeks, and it's not a playoff team. It might be based on what the NFC East, how it lays out, but you can't look at the first 7 weeks of this season that this team has played and think, well, there's a playoff team. I mean, playoff teams don't score 17 points on the road and have that be their highest output. I mean, they just don't score enough, and it seems like when they do, like the Jacksonville game, it's very easily explainable. Like, well, I mean, they lined up in man-to-man, and it gave them good opportunities on the outside. Wendy Mason says, get Amari and Dez. We need a nuclear option. Dez Bryant's not coming back, but Amari Cooper could potentially. Depends on what Oakland wants for him. All right, everybody, I'm Ari Temkin. This is Showtime on Phantom. Appreciate each and every one of you for being part of this show each and every day. This show is your show, so thank you for being a part of this show each and every day. Become a Showtimer if you're not already. Hey, if it's your first time watching, hopefully you'll come back again tomorrow and be part of the conversation. with the rest of the Showtimers, people that stream this show each and every day, are part of this conversation each and every day. We couldn't do this show without you, so thank you for being this show. Thank you to the Showtimers who show up every day and are part of the show. Patrick Prescott, Brian Walker, Keith Price, Jason Turner, Steve Eason, Dakota Stiegel, Curtis Starks, Jay Navarro, Jesse Garcia, Neil Favre, Patrick Kahn, Chris Bennett, Diana Lopez, and many, many more. I'm sure forgetting some names out. Jason Wright. So again, thank you all for being a part of today's show, each and every day show. Hope to see you tomorrow. We'll have a lot more to get into tomorrow. I'm going to break down some film for you so we can see what went wrong and what I saw from my vantage point. All that coming up tomorrow right here on Phantom, putting you at the center of the Dallas sports discussion. And if you have not yet already, make sure to go ahead and hit that like button on the Phantom page and make sure to hit the subscribe button on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and search Watch Phantom there and hit that subscribe button. But for now, I'm out.